Welcome back to Following Noadon, a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 181, and we are entering part 5 of The Hero of Ages, chapters 59 through 64. Eliot, how are you?
Doing great. We are approaching another end of a book, which is always mixed feelings. I'm excited for the climax of our story. Still, I think I might have put this in the live reactions. I feel like we have 90% of this puzzle solved. We've gotten a lot of pieces. We've gotten a lot of explanations. We've done a lot of things, and yet I still don't feel like I have a clear idea of what the puzzle is we're trying to solve.
We're still missing the
I
face of
just
the puzzle.
yeah. I feel like we have 90% of the pieces together, and I still can't tell you what the picture is on the box because still don't know what do how do we even defeat Ruin? How do we even what do we got to do to win? We don't even know that. We're still in the fact finding stage of our hero's journey, and we are running out of pages.
I believe there's 26 chapters in part 5, which compare that to, I don't know, The Way of Kings, where there's 6 chapters. Paul, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to finally be in part 5 of this book. Man, this is a fun part, and I mean, I'm just kind of savoring it. You know, this is the really fun part of such a wonderful book, the end of a good trilogy. So I'm just kind of content, happy, enjoying it.
Sounds good. We have this episode and then 3 more to finish the book, and then a wrap-up episode. So 4 more episodes after this week, and we will be done with the book. Then, just as a brief recap for anyone reading along with us, we will be immediately after finishing The Hero of Ages, we will be doing the entire book of Elantris in one episode. We will be doing a brief flyover view of Elantris. And yes, we've been reading Elantris alongside the Hero of Ages, so, you know, if we accidentally put Raoden next to Ruin, I apologize. And then after that, we will be going back to Mistborn for Secret History. I plan on doing Secret History in 2 episodes, though it might be 3. And then after Secret History is then a Stormlight current episode of the chapter that was read at Dragonsteel 2023, which I'm very excited about that episode. And then we will be entering Era 2 of Mistborn right after that. With all that said, today let's talk about the beginning of part 5 of The Hero of Ages. All right, Eliot. Can we get a brief summary of what has happened for today?
Most certainly. We read chapters 59 through 64 to start off part 5. Hensoon arrives at Oto to find out that he did not get to the city where Vin is, but instead got to where Breeze and Sazed and Spook are. He talks to Sazed and it agrees to take him to the Chondra, which is I think a big deal, but a really big deal of trying to get that information that we're trying to get to solve. You know, what do we need to do to defeat Ruin? So let's see. Yeah, it continues on there. Meanwhile, Vin is on trial with Yeoman as he tries to determine what exactly happened with the Lord Ruler and what Vin's place in all of this is. Vin has more conversations with Ruin, and it continues on. And then all hell breaks loose as Marsh appears,
Yes.
and we things start to descend into chaos as he hacks, doesn't he? He comes in and starts taking control of things.
Yeah, more or less.
And yeah, that's honestly kind of it. Way more to it, but that's the big picture.
Yeah, I feel like the the Spook storyline is pretty much done. He has, at the end of chapter 64, he has one key piece of information that someone tells him to pass on. Did you catch that, Eliot? Someone's still talking to Spook at the end of chapter 64.
Did that happen? Did I miss something else again?
So, Spook, he's quite injured and laying in hospice, but at the beginning of chapter 64, there's a voice or unquoted dialogue, maybe in italics, that says, "You have a key piece of information. Let it fly," I believe is the quote. And that's how the end of the chapter ends as well. The same phrase. Did you catch that?
I recall that. I think this is going to be another one of those instances. I've done this before where I read it and just assumed, oh yeah, Spook is just thinking to himself. That's rational Spook speaking to irrational Spook, trying to remind him, you need to do something with what you just learned. But I should have learned my lesson by now that those kind of just italicized thoughts, could easily be or influencer in Spooks.
But we thought we solved that problem, right? He took the spike out.
Definitely thought we solved that problem. That was his epic hero moment, is carving the spike out of himself. Does Spook wear any earrings?
Paul, any thoughts?
No, I don't actually wear earrings, so it's probably not great for me. I don't have much to chime in on that part. No, one thing I will say, and we probably could have talked about this a little bit in our last episode, but did not. Spook has really been such a huge focal point of this book. It feels almost like the effort that went into like Cosmere in previous books and like the first book or things has gone into Spook. And honestly, the question I ask that I think fairly often is why? Why Spook? Why him? And I think that's the point. Is number one, Spook was rather unassuming throughout the other books, but I think my best guess there may be a words of Brandon that Trevor knows by heart that answers this, but my thought is to Spook taking out his spike. I feel it kind of shows that there is power over Ruin. You know, Ruin did not have like a full hold on Spook like maybe he does over Marsh or the Inquisitors, right? But his goal is to spike all these people so that he has influence over them, right? Like that's his goal. And Spook, I feel like is an example that we're not destitute to lose to Ruin. You know, it's kind of showing you don't have to be Kelsier to potentially, I feel like, triumph over Ruin. You don't have to be a deified character, which Spook does kind of become. I mean, he is that survivor of the flames. Like he is a lot of that. But I mean, Spook, I feel like to the reader is still kind of understood to be like a standard character, if you will. That's not putting him down at all, but just to show that we see a lot of his weakness. We see a lot of him just as a normal kind of guy, a normal kind of poor kid who grew up, like, nothing super crazy about him. Like Vin has this crazy power, right? We know she's special. Spook, we don't know him to be special, I think so. Yeah. So I'm proud to say that I am kind of catching on to that in this read through, but I'm gonna knock myself down here and say that my first read through, I didn't really put two and two together that Spook got the power to burn pewter from the spike.
Right.
I didn't really put that together. I actually was kind of deceived. I thought this actually was Kelsier appearing at a point, and that's how he actually got the power to burn pewter. And I totally missed that he loses that whenever
Right.
he takes out his spike. Totally missed that. So, yeah, that I didn't get that until this, like, a little while ago, reading this. So
I found the quote that I was referring to. By the way, 64 is only like 2 pages. Chapter 64 begins in quotes, and that's why you absolutely must get the message sent, Spook. The pieces of this thing are all spinning about, cast to the wind. You have a clue that nobody else does. Send it flying for me. And then, later in the chapter, in italics, it says, send it flying, ... Spook, you must get that message sent. Spook, ... in italics. Paul, any thoughts? Now who's talking to him?
that is a good question. Maybe it's the cognitive shadow of clubs.
Okay. Clubs
That's all.
invest. Well, I guess he's feasible, I suppose.
Thank you.
Eliot, any thoughts?
I am almost getting a in between worlds kind of vibe from this chapter of Spook is just coming back to the physical realm,
Yeah.
consciousness or whatever. And you're right. As I'm looking at it more, it's more than just a thought in his head, italics. It's dialogue to open up the chapter, dialogue that's unattributed to any particular person. The only other person here in the scene that kind of starts off with is Breeze, but it's not Breeze that's saying this, I don't think. I don't know.
How did we get to chapter 64? We started with 59 through 64. How are we talking about?
And that's all, folks. We finished all of our chapters, so tune in next week.
I was just looking
kinda
back at
how
the
I felt.
outline, and I was like, wait, we skipped to the very last point. Anyway.
I have a question. Well, that's kind of how I felt last week whenever I jumped right in with preservation. Question. I'm curious to know what both of y'all think about Yeoman.
Uh-huh.
Yeoman is kind of a big player here, and just I don't know. I was just a little surprised that Yeoman would still be around and kicking it in the fashion he is. So I'm just curious to know what y'all think about him altogether, and then kind of the narrative of the story of him and Van and Ruin and just everything going on there. But first, I'm curious to know what y'all think just about Yeoman, the character, I guess.
Through a lot of this, Yeoman feels like a small player in a big world. When we arrive at the city, the whole time I'm just thinking, Yeoman, get out of the way, bro. We're trying to save the world. Stop. It's fine. Let us in. We're just trying to save the world. We're trying to save you and the rest of the world. And so throughout all this, it's like, who are you, minor statesmen, to try and insert yourself into the lord rulers and the Vins and the Ellens and the ruins of the world, which crazy to say something like that, right? When you think about where Vin has come through, the fact that
Yeah.
Vin is in that conversation. Anyway, so all that said, he's definitely an opportunist. He had an opportunity and he took it. He took control. He's extremely religiously motivated. religion is taking center stage yet again in one of Brandon's stories like this, where Yeoman is trying to figure out where Vin fits in his religion. He's insistent that the Lord Ruler can't be dead because the Lord Ruler is God for him. But Vin tries to kind of pull the card of, well, hang on, maybe I took out the Lord Ruler and now I'm God and you should, join me kind of thing. And Yeoman, struggles with that. He has to reconcile, well, hang on a second, who are you in my religion? As he tries to figure that out. So clearly a man of the church, I guess you might say. And then yet there's the drop that he's apparently a misting. He's apparently a atium misting,
Yeah.
not a Mistborn, which we thought wasn't possible, but doesn't shock me at all because we've had at least a dozen. "Well, that's not possible in Allomancy. Oh, wait, yeah, it is moments. So that doesn't surprise me at all. So what was my take on Yeoman? Yeah, I don't know. Over, crafty, religious. Get out of the way, bro. We're just trying to save the world.
Continuing a conversation from last week, Elliot, is that a good misdirection? That the information we had from book one is just unreliable and lies spread among the nobility? That you can't have an ATM noble or an ATM misting?
Yes, I think it's a good misdirection because it fits within the plot that we've been going through. Like the Lord Ruler intentionally spread misinformation
Right.
about lots of things.
Right.
Control, what everyone was doing. Ruin intentionally spreads misinformation about everything to try and get people to do what they're doing. So the fact that our characters would teach allomancy incorrectly makes perfect sense in the context of this story.
Yeah. What do I think of Yeoman? I didn't remember Yeoman as a character at all going into this book. So meeting him, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I vaguely remember somebody in charge of Fadrex. And then he just keeps showing up after scene. Like a character like this, you kind of expect, Vin and Ellen to deal with them, get on with Ruin and finding the ATM and what we're really here for. But no, he just doesn't go away. He's just kind of here. And I kind of like that, where there's a lot of big implications going on. Like Ruin is in the room with Yeoman and he's got no idea. He has no idea what he's in the middle of, zero. And I like that as a concept for a book, that while the stakes are so high, you still have maybe not even greedy, maybe just opportunist, like you said, statesman trying to take advantage of the situation he's in. So he has a city and he's taking whichever steps he can take to protect his city. So I like that concept. I don't have very many strong feelings about Yeoman. I enjoy that Ellen sat down with him and saw the humanity in him and showed the reader the humanity of him, because it really shows us that Yeoman's not the bad guy here. Like, Yeoman may be threatening Vin's life and he might be worshiping the Lord Ruler, but Brandon Sanderson established to us he's really not all that different from Ellen. When they're sitting there talking about politics and state theory, both of them are 95% aligned. They just have this one very key piece of information that's different, which alters their entire worldview, which I also like in a character.
I like what you said about you kind of expect Yeoman to be that character that Vin or Ellen runs into and then gets past really quick and then moves on to Ruin or bigger things. And it is really interesting why he's here. And I was kind of asking that question a lot of why is Yeoman here? But I think what you said, it makes a really good point, and it kind of adds up a lot better. And it is very ominous to have him in the room with Vin and Ruin, but he doesn't realize it.
Right.
It's
think
really
he gives.
suspenseful. I think if this scene was adapted like on screen too, I think this would be a really, really good scene. It'd be very suspenseful.
I think Yeoman is he gives you perspective. He's the banana for scale. You wouldn't get. You like that analogy?
That's
He's
wonderful.
What
Yeah.
you wouldn't.
sentences I never thought I'd hear. 101. Yeoman is the banana for scale.
But he is. Think about it. Like you wouldn't
Yeah.
appreciate the scale of it all. This battle between Vin and Ruin at the cosmic level as much if you didn't have Yeoman there in the room, kind of quibbling about, well, but society and religion and all these things. It's he because he's there, you appreciate the scale of it better.
Yeah, I agree. I just was not expecting that those words. The atium. Why are we still after the atium, Elliot?
So this is what I'm talking about with my intro and all this. Why are we after the? I don't know. Still don't know. We discover Yeoman doesn't have it, which apparently shocks Ruin.
Mm,
Like really shocks Ruin,
yeah.
which confuses me. But like, yeah, what? Why do we need the Ruin or the ATM? I still don't understand it. I think we've been given the information that maybe I'm jumping to a bit of conclusions, but through the epigraphs, I think I've been able to put together that Preservation knew he couldn't stop Ruin. So Preservation gave to humans the ability abilities, magic, to fight against Ruin in the hopes that humans could do the impossible that Preservation can't. Go a step further, what did Preservation give them? His body in the metals, I guess, that he's given.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, we're talking about metals, we're talking about what they can do, we're talking about the power we're giving to humanity. ATM is one of those metals. Is Are we getting metaphorical with all this? And Ruin is trying to track down Preservation's body in the atium.
An atium.
There's the
Okay.
reveal in this chapter. There's a reveal in this discussion. They pull out some maps. Vin and Yeoman are like, "Oh, wait a second, let's map this out." And they realize that the caches that the Lord Ruler has left are all near major metal deposits in the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's dropped as if it's supposed to be this huge reveal.
Right.
Like, dun dun dun. And I'm just over here like, okay, is that supposed to tie to this whole metal is Preservation's body? Why does Ruin need access to it? Why does Ruin not already know where the A-team is? Where is it? We've been hunting for the A-team since book 1. Since early in book 1.
Yeah.
And now we've been everywhere. We've unlocked all the caches. Where is this stuff? Why do we even care?
So the big reveal to me is that apparently Ruin cares a lot. Like that was a big
Yeah.
revelation for Vin was
Yep.
I'm leading Ruin to all of these caches by
Right.
going to find them. I'm showing him where they are, and the fact that the ATM is not in Cache 5 is a big deal for Vin, but she doesn't really know why. She's got this feeling that she needs to find it, but it's been established that we don't actually need it. It's established in this chapter of Yeoman saying, why is the ATM important? There's no Alamanters to burn it anymore. Like, I just have a little bit that I've saved personally, but that's it. So Vin is trying to find it, but then when it's not in Cache 5, Ruin like freaks out for like a split second and then recomposes himself. That was the big reveal of the episode to me, that Ruin for whatever reason is just distraught or like in big trouble that the ATM isn't here. Like there's like you said, a big puzzle piece missing, and I don't really know. I couldn't guess what it is.
The other clue that we have that I'm trying to we have puzzle piece 1, we also have puzzle piece 2, and I'm trying to fit them together. Puzzle piece 2 is Preservation communicating with Ellen.
Hmm.
Preservation shows up and flails his arms widely, trying to tell Ellen, do this, don't do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
pause real quick. You know what I think of when I think of that scene? I think of those like inflatable air guys outside the car dealership where they go like, flail their arms around. And anyway, moving on.
Accurate. He seems to be saying, don't go to Fadrex.
Yes.
So is that the simple message? Is Preservation thought the atium was there and was trying to say, Ellen, don't go there, don't unlock that. I need that atium to stay locked up, kind of thing. So maybe Preservation would be just as shocked to learn atium is not there also, and that was the whole message. Again, I'm trying to put two puzzle pieces together. I'm not sure they fit.
I think it's kind of interesting that I feel like this whole atium stash in my brain, that's such a first book problem,
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that was the dilemma in the first book was, oh my gosh, the Lord Ruler has this ATM stash, and whoever finds it is,
Rich.
gonna have all the power, all the financial power, all the fighting power. There's so much with it. And then now I feel like I've kind of moved past that, and I'm a little surprised that it's the thing, and like it's the thing in this case, like what's going on, what they're looking for, the mystery at hand. Excuse me, sorry. And it makes me wonder, like you said it, Trevor. Like the big question is why does Ruin want the ATM? Like why is he actually surprised or disappointed or upset whenever they don't find it? Like what is he actually going to use this for? I assume so. Actually, I think my further thoughts are for Stormlight spoiler stuff later, so I will hold off.
And the epigraph pushes us further and says Ruin didn't send his inquisitors to Fadrex until Yeoman had confirmed the atium was there or something, and that's when Marsh shows up. So I don't know. Like, does the epigraph say inquisitor or inquisitors? Do we have multiple inquisitors that just showed up and only Marsh showed his face?
I took it as he never sent the Inquisitors until he learned. When he did, he sent one.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
think we mentioned this at one point. You can make new Inquisitors, so I'm not going to completely fall out of my seat if a whole army of Inquisitors shows up at some point.
I mean, it's been well established that the Inquisitors have been conspicuously missing ever since the end of book 1. So where have they been?
Yeah. You can make new Koloss. You can make new Inquisitors. Koloss show up randomly in the thousands. I'm going to be terrified if Inquisitors start showing up in the thousands. It's going to be like that scene from The Matrix where Neo's trying to fight the army and of like agents, and they just like keep duplicating and replicating and just like piling in on him. Yeah, you seen that the movie?
Yes.
It's like the third Matrix movie.
I've seen all of them once. I've seen the first one more than that. Sazed?
Sazed. We are making strides with Sazed. Going into this book, I talked about Sazed as who I was most curious about. And here we go. He's been going through his religions. He's one by one methodically examining all the religions known to man, and he gets down to the bottom of the pile. He gets to his last one, turns it over, and says, "Nope, every single one of those has flaws in it," and is trying to battle with that. I'll read you a quote. We'll jump into my quote.
Okay.
There's a scene that I thought was really kind of summed it up well. And Sazed quotes himself from book 1, I think.
Imagine
In his own head. He's wrestling with all this in his head. And he quotes himself. What does he say? Ten Soon has just arrived on the scene in dog form. And Sazed's kind of trying to wrestle with all this at the same time. Let's see, we'll get up. How could anyone understand? We're just in Sazed's head. How could anyone understand the pain of a faith betrayed? He had believed, yet when he had needed hope the most, he had found only emptiness. He picked up the book, then snapped closed his portfolio, locking the inadequate summaries within. He turned towards the hearth, better to burn it all. Belief. He remembered a voice from the past, his own voice, speaking to Vin on that terrible day after Kelsier's death. Belief isn't simply a thing for fair times and bright days, I think. What is belief? What is faith? You don't continue in it after failure. And he continues to muse and struggle on that. Caught my eye because that's one of the quotes that I highlighted coming out of book 1 as, man, I love that. I love that concept of faith, true faith perseveres through the difficulties. Even when you're challenged, the definition of faith is you keep going, that belief. And I at least lauded Sazed for that strong faith. How far Sazed has come since then. He's completely broken, completely without faith, such that he has to remember back to his own words to a very young and innocent Vin to try and encourage himself. And it doesn't even work. He doesn't even, as that scene goes on, and he doesn't even convince himself that he should have faith. It was a stop and think moment. I had to stop and think.
But then through Tensoon, he realizes there's one more religion that he hasn't checked. And it's the Terrace religion. I'm trying to remember the exact way this is revealed out. Tensoon refers to Sazed as the
Announcer?
The announcer. And that sparks in Sazed's memory, that was one of the words that Ruin changed. In the engraving, the announcer is mentioned, and instead, Ruin changed it to the witness, or the holy first witness or something, which is what the Ska call him. And so then Ruin changes it to match the prophecy, and so the prophecy is fulfilled. But Tensoon calls him the announcer, and that makes him think, hold on, there's only one way that you could have known that term, and that is to study the same things of the person who made the carving, the engraving, who was Terrace. So you have Terrace religion heritage, basically, is what he comes to the conclusion of. And Tensoon's like, yes, Captain Obvious, you should have figured this out a book ago, but you didn't. The original Khandra are Rashik's friends, who Rashik strips their power from them and gives them immortality in the form of Khandra. Which I don't know who could have predicted that, but Rashik realizes that if he can be a feruchemist and an allomancer at the same time, anyone who's a feruchemist and gets one of these beads at the Well of Ascension can be me. So I need to strip feruchemy out of everybody, except for myself. So all of his feruchemist friends, instead of just killing them, he says, okay, I'm going to take your feruchemy, but I'll give you immortality in the form of being a Khandra. And they're like, okay. So that's how the Khandra show up, I guess. And so all of that to say, Sazed is now on the way to the Khandra homeland to talk to the first generation about their old religion. Where was that on your bingo card?
Not only where was it on the bingo card, but where is this going?
Yeah.
Still, okay, maybe that helps Sazed solve his theological dilemma that he's in. Is that really going to uncover some kind of secret that helps us save the world?
Yeah.
It seems like our only friend at this
Well,
point, our only hope.
and by this logic, Sazed's not going to be in anywhere near Vin and Elend for the final act of this book. He's got to go to the Condor homeland and figure out something by the end of the book, and we still have to fight Ruin or whatever's going to happen. So I guess Sazed's off to start a new adventure, off into Era 2.
It does almost feel like this should have been like a part 3
Yeah.
realization. It feels like this should have been something that happened earlier, and we get to kind of wait to see how it really culminates. It does feel a little odd in the pacing here to, like, Vin is like near death and in the face of ruin, and says it's like, there is another religion, or something, and stuff, and then takes off. It feels like a little bit of skewed, like, importance between the two. But, I mean, if there's anything I've known from previous Sanderson books, is that things usually tie together pretty well. If not necessarily together in the same room, like, there's good stuff going on. So,
Thoughts stewing in my mind since the last episode, and some things that you pointed out, Trevor, coming up here. I did realize just now that does set up AZ to be underground
Ooh.
at a potentially key moment.
Interesting.
You pointed out the hints, the direction that Tensoon was giving. They make sure you're underground when the mists leave, I think is what it said.
Mm-hmm.
Pointing out that I missed. Missed.
Nah.
If Sazed goes to the land, like, we know that's underground. So maybe this is gonna, by accident, save him from whatever catastrophe is gonna happen that Tensoon is extremely vaguely hinting at.
That's something, just as a side note, in a story, when a character knows and just like vaguely gives hints to the other characters, just tell them. Like, that's just a personal pet peeve of mine. Just, if they're in mortal danger, don't give them vague hints on how to avoid it. Just tell them what you know. But anyway, anything else before we get to a Stormlight spoiler? Paul, I think you had something about us in the Stormlight spoiler.
I absolutely do.
All right. Stormlight spoiler, go now.
What was I talking about at that point? Hold on.
I don't remember either.
Oh, I think I remember. Okay. So, we were wondering about the atium. We were wondering why the atium.
Okay.
What obviously we understand on this world atium is still the most valuable thing. They keep saying, oh, it has no value if you have no one to burn it and no one to buy it and stuff like that. It's worthless, But atium is still pretty important. And my understanding is, so I don't know exactly how this works, and this is why I want to ask all this a little bit. It's partly a question. So on Roshar, investiture is Stormlight, and it's kind of everywhere, especially when the high storms come. Here, investiture's kind of tied to the metals. It's still a bit unclear to me on where the investiture comes from and what is investiture on Scadrial, because you can't you can't just pick up a bar of, like, you can't just pick up a sheet of metal off the ground and burn it, like, it has to be a specific, like, elementic grade metal, it has to be, like, procured professionally to be usable. But atium seems to be like the raw metal that is elementic. My understanding, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's anyone who's like editing it or messing with it to make it pure or burnable. They just pull it. It's just hazardous to mine. They have the guys in the pits pulling it out, and that's where it comes from, you know. So is atium like the ultimate place of investiture on Scadrial? Is that why Ruin wants it? I don't know if the other metals have more or less or how that works, but that's my thought of why a shard may be after this. If it may be a bigger relation of atium to investiture than the other metals are, which also made me think of the Ghost Bloods, but I don't really have a direct connection there. So I feel like that's debatably not Stormlight spoiler, but my thoughts were that it was. So
I guess the big question for me is there what are the pits of Hathsin? Are the pits of Hathsin a perpendicularity? We haven't really discussed that term besides the Well of Ascension. And I'm not even sure if that term exists yet in publication order. But maybe it does. But is there like an underground lake under the pits of Hathsin or something? Or yeah, why is atium just you pluck it out of the ground in the pits of Hathsin, and that's pure investiture, pure allomancy, whatever you want to call it? I don't know.
I struggled too. You mentioned Ghost Bloods. That we know the Ghost Bloods are trying to get readily transportable investiture, and they seem to think Stormlight is free.
Yeah.
Through this whole time, even before, as soon as I learned that metal was the magic system on Scadrial, I'm immediately kind of questioning metal is rather transportable. If the metal is investiture, why do the Ghost Bloods not just have a massive mining operation on Scadrial and just transport metals off of Scadrial around the world and around the Cosmere, and boom, there's your transportable powers. So it seems to me there's got to be more to it than.
Sorry. Sorry, don't mind me. I don't know if this reinforces your question or what, but do you remember in Oathbringer when Azure, actually it's Hoyd gives Azure off screen these massive like silver or aluminum plates, and she puts them in the room in the wall for her soulcasters to be shielded from the fused? Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
It's like a very odd detail, but it's there. Azure knows about, I always mix them up. It's either aluminum or silver. Off-world work, right? That they're the anti-investiture metal. So why don't investiture metals work off Scadrial would be the question, because I would assume that they don't work off Scadrial, and that's why the Ghost Bloods are after Stormlight. Do you guys know that the Ghost Bloods are from Scadrial? Have I told you that? Did you know that?
Feels like news. Well, I mean, we could guess at that with the recent revelation we have that Kelsier is Thydakar.
Yeah.
So that there's a link to Scadrial right there.
Yeah. The Ghost Bloods originate from Scadrial, and I mean, you'll probably learn that next episode, I think, or you will have the information by the end of the book that you could figure that out. It's not like a major plot point of the Hero of Ages, but yeah, I'll mildly spoil this for you. Do you remember when we're meeting the Ghost Bloods in Words of Radiance, the weird mask lady, like she's Yatil is her name. who's in the war camps. She talks to Shallan a
Oh,
bunch, and she's like, Mraize's like contact in or on Roshar. You remember her?
yep, yep.
There's some telling signs that she's from Scadrial. She's described as, if you've read Mistborn Era 1, you will recognize her as from Scadrial. Actually, anyway. It's the Era 2 as well, but anyway. The Ghostbloods are originating from Scadrial, so they know about metals, certainly. So I would assume that metals are not useful off of Scadrial, and then just the question is why.
Yeah, that's my question.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Alrighty. Stormlight refresher, gentlemen. We
Ready.
we are still 4-1. I think we've installed at 4-1 for 3 weeks now. Eliot will lead this week. Here comes your chapter name. Are you ready?
Ready as I'm going to be for these ones.
A single casualty.
Single casualty. This feels more like one of those metaphorical chapter titles that's not literally about battle with a single casualty.
I think it's so funny when you guys like way overanalyze these. So it's about art, so then it's definitely not about Shallan because that's a misdirect. So yeah, anyway.
It's like Eliot talking about when was Brandon Sanderson's son a teenager? Okay, it must be more recent, like that level of metagaming. Yeah.
Oof. I am not sure about this. I'm gonna go. This is Way of Kings. This is Bridge Run. There's a bridge run going on. I don't remember exactly what happens, but it's like Kaladin beating himself up because he lost somebody. Maybe he didn't even lose anybody. And his mental state is the casualty. Yeah, something like that.
Incorrect. One of these days, the trivia question is going to be who is the first named bridge member to die on a bridge run. So be prepared. Go ahead, Paul.
I think I actually have a good guess on this one. I say that, and then I'm sure it'll be wrong. But I think this is the chapter where Dalinar and Taravangian are talking with each other. I think in like Oathbringer, where it's like the big ethics conversation that they have of like, if I don't remember exactly. It's like, do you kill all the prisoners to get rid of the one bad guy, or do you not kill any of them, or what? How do you enact justice and stuff if one person did wrong and you have several people at stake, you know? And so that's my prediction. It's that chapter.
Incorrect.
Okay, class.
That was so good.
I'm once again proud of my guess, at least.
You should be. That was a good one. I had high hopes for you when you started with the word Dalinar, because my answer starts with the word Dalinar. Honorably discharging Kaladin from the Windrunners at the beginning of A Rhythm of War. He has not lost a single Windrunner in their excursion to save Hearthstone, and they return to the tower, and Dalinar confronts him about freezing up in battle again, and discharges him from the Windrunners, and old emotional Kaladin says, "I am the single casualty of today." One of my favorite scenes of like the whole series, by the way. That scene is so good. I know I've ranted about that scene before on this podcast, but incredible scene. All right, Paul, your quote ID, sir. I need to get my men ready. You know something is coming. those countdowns on the wall. Have you seen more of those red spren?
Those countdowns on the wall. Have you seen more of those red spread? This feels so familiar. So, okay. I think this is in one of Dalinar's visions.
Okay.
Maybe like beginning of Oathbringer. Sort of beginning of Oathbringer. But who specifically is saying this? The fact that it's in one of those, that I think it's in one of those visions, is what's throwing me off. Okay, do you mind reading it for me one more time? I know I ask every single week, but one more time.
I need to get my men ready. You know something is coming. Those countdowns on the walls. Have you seen more of those red spren?
I'm just gonna go that this is Dalinar. In my head, he's talking to Yasna. I don't know that that's right. I think he may be talking to someone in a vision, but that's what I'm gonna go with.
Incorrect. Eliot.
So countdowns on the wall is Renarin scratching the countdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
We find out later. Gotta be. This is Red Sprint. I vaguely remember that. It sounds like something Kaladin would say, but I don't know. That just doesn't quite feel right. It's got to be Words of Radiance. Get my men ready. It's not Elokar. It's. I think it's Kaladin.
Correct. It is Kaladin talking to Syl. Kaladin is the new leader of Dalinar's personal guard and freaking out about the countdowns that are showing up during the visions. And he's asking Syl, I've seen more of those red spren. The storm spren are being summoned to the Shattered Plains in preparation for the Everstorm. All right, 1-0 to Eliot. Eliot, here is your review. This book has serious pacing and structure issues. Long parts of it drag, as this is exacerbated by there being too many point of views. Those point of views switching too frequently. A lot of the impact of the ending was drained by this disjointed point of view swapping, which is a pity as those events are momentous.
Kind of looks like he's Googling.
It does look like he's Googling again. He probably lost audio.
I'd like to call a review. Review on the play.
A video assisted referee.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's gone.
Yeah. It's funny because we could watch him have the moments of
Yes.
of I don't know, worry.
And he's back.
I don't know what happened there.
We watched you that whole time. You never dropped.
What?
Yeah.
You guys were completely gone. My internet was fine, but I was getting no sound or audio from you.
Yeah.
We could see you like clicking around on your computer and like looking
Yeah.
around, and we were like, "Is he just Googling this?" Like,
Yeah, I read out the review, and we were accusing you of Googling again.
I completely lost you guys' video and audio. You froze as if I lost internet, but I didn't lose internet.
Okay.
I got none of that.
Let's try that again. Eliot, here comes your review. This book has serious pacing and structure issues. Long parts of it drag, and this is exacerbated by there being too many point of views, and those point of views switching too frequently. A lot of the impact of the ending was drained by this disjointed point of view swapping, which is a pity, as those events are momentous.
This is Oathbringer, which I think doesn't struggle with that problem as much as other books. Like Wisdom of War has a lot of point of views in it. Oathbringer, though, especially like leading into the Sanderlanche, I think starts to jump a bunch, which adds to the epicness of it. But this person struggled with it. Oathbringer. This is Oathbringer. Sounds like middle of the road review. It seems too obvious. But apparently I overthink things, so Oathbringer 3 out of 5.
Paul.
So my initial guess is definitely Rhythm of War on this, with a lot of point of views, a lot of swapping around everything. So I'm going to stick with that. I really questioned that for a long time, as is probably healthy and unhealthy to overthink it this much. Of like, oh, well, maybe it's just the second book or whatever, and they just weren't far along, It's all about perspective. I'm going to go with the fourth book, Rhythm of War. And I feel like this is actually the hard part. I always misjudge this. Unless they like obviously hate it and it's a 1-star. They liked the event. They said it was a momentous moment. So they at least liked and sort of appreciated the story and what happened at the end. But they were just turned off by the perspective shifts and everything. It's either a 2 or a 3. I'm gonna go ahead and just go with a 3 out of 5. That's my genuine belief. That is also what Eliot said, but that's my genuine belief.
Man, through these Stormlight refreshers, I have realized that I'm a big proponent of rooting for the underdog, because every time I watch Paul go through and agonize through his answers, I'm rooting for him. I just want him to get it. And he got it. It is a 3 out of 5 for Rhythm of War. So, Eliot, you got 1 point. Paul, you got 2 points. So we are 2-2 off that review. And then this goes to Paul for the trivia.
Night Radiant. That's my answer. I'm kidding. Okay. It's always down to this last one, and this one always fails me. I believe that. I believe.
Who are the first 2 bridgemen to assist Kaladin in his efforts to lead and train Bridge 4?
Okay. The first 2 bridgemen to assist and help Kaladin lead and train the bridgemen. Okay. Has to be Teft. Okay. I'm talking through this. This is not my I know I think I know what my answer is, but I'm gonna talk through this a little bit. So part of me really wants to say Rock, but Rock specifically wasn't training. He didn't want anything to do with combat. He was a cook. So that leaves my brain with Sigzil or maybe Moash. Early on, maybe Moash. I'm thinking Moash hasn't entered the frame yet. So I'm going to go with Teft and Sigzil, final answer.
Okay.
I'm
Incorrect. Eliot.
That was going to be my answer too. As I'm logicking through it while you're also talking, Paul. That's the same conclusion I got to. Surely Teft.
Okay.
Surely you're half right and half wrong. It's got Teft. It would have said Sigzil. But you just got the buzzer on that one. Moash is the other one I'm thinking in my mind too. I agree with you. It's not Rock. There's a bunch of I don't even remember all their names too.
there are
There's
a lot of like
others.
early bridge
Like
men.
Scar is another one of them. Lopin's part of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now he comes later though, doesn't he? Well,
Yeah.
maybe.
Lopin shows up later.
Yeah, he definitely isn't part of like
Wow.
the OG crew. Teft and Moash. I mean, I could guess elsewhere, but that seems like the most likely.
Okay, so I'm in a bit of a pickle here because all right, I'm going to explain what I'm about to do here. I am going to give the point to Paul because he got it half right in Teft. Teft is correct, and you both got the same half point. So, because Paul answered first, I'm going to give him that point as if that was the correct answer and Eliot wouldn't have gotten the chance to answer. The correct answer, and maybe I worded the question poorly, is Teft and Rock. Because Rock is and the reason why I'm doing this is I'm kind of just discounting Rock as an answer because both of you disqualified Rock because of how I framed the question. Rock and Teft are the first two to help Kaladin with like the meals and the knobweed sap and gathering like the equipment to help bridge forward. That's what I was going for. And both of you discounted Rock off the word train. Like, Rock is not a fighter.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why both of you discounted that. And that's fair. I understand that. So I'm going to give the point to Paul because he said Teft first and it was his week to go first. So I'm going to say that was correct. And Paul wins this week. In the comments, if I was unfair, you can yell at me. Or Eliot, you can yell at me too if that's unfair.
Well, the way you line it up, he takes the point or the half point, and yeah, it before I could even get the chance to take it. So
right,
makes sense to me.
I will take what I can get, and just know that this is the the start of a small. This is so hard to say. This is.
I'm smart, and this is the start.
Yes, smart Paul. This is the start of a small snowball. Which will,
Okay, I didn't realize what you were trying to say, but I completely agree with you. That is very hard to say. Oh my goodness.
This is the start of a small snowball, which will transcend into a massive lead, which I have by the time it's 5 minutes out, where I will just be, 20 to 4. Off of a technicality. Yeah.
Okay, 4-2. Moving to next week. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Eliot.
See you later.
That was a lot of fun. See y'all next week.